So I have a data set here recorded again by the X7, and under my point cloud tools I have some registration commands that I can use. So this data was processed and refined and exported in the X7 and brought straight into TBC. However, if I was checking the data, if I was just to create a cutting plane, just create a horizontal slice through the data. To change that to look at my scans by scan color. And I can start to go through my data basically and check it for any issues I might have in terms of overlap. I can change the plane thickness here, bring it down to 0.2. It just gives me a little bit of a sharper line to look at for any overlapping errors in the point cloud. So if I did find any errors within my data, so if I was checking through my data and I could see some sort of misalignment in this corridor, if I just switch my view here to just to see the outline, perhaps identify that we have a couple of setups here in this area, 22, 23, 24. With my view filter manager, if I turn off all my scans, I can turn on 24, just isolate these scans basically to see where I have an issue. I can identify which scan it was. For instance, let's just say it was 23 for this example that was giving us the problems. If I hit the properties, we can also see the colour of each scan. So you can see from this scan station 23 is magenta in colour, which was aligned to this one here. So if we knew that 23 was a bit of an issue and we were going to have to re-register it, what we can do is we can use the registration tab within the point cloud commands. So under here we have register scans, georeferencing scans, and create scan station. So the georeferencing scans basically to position your all your scan data against control. We would usually do that at the end, and it's actually also under the registration scans kind of workflow in there. There's also an option to create scan stations, and that's really for kind of SX10, SX12 data if you want to remove the kind of station information parameters and just treat it as a normal, traditional scan. For this, we're going to go into our register scans. And this box here will open up, giving you a couple of tabs basically to work through. So instantly what it does is it opens up with the pairwise registration. So this is basically when you're linking one scan to another scan or one scan to a group of scans. The first option you have here is the plane-based registration command. So basically if you had brought in some data, it wasn't registered at all, no registration had taken place, you can select the plane-based, and usually what you would do here is you would select all scans and then ask it to automatically register, and basically it'll do a full registration from scratch, trying to align it using common planes in between each scan. So here at the moment we actually have a number of reference stations that are all worked together because we've already processed this, but you could actually select to run the plane base using all the scans or a selection of scans. Usually if you do this it would be with all scans because you're processing it for the first time. Well, for this data set, we're just looking to tidy up maybe a couple of scans that haven't quite aligned. Something maybe to note that if you do bring in data from the X7, rather than going, if it's quite close in terms of alignment, it might be an idea rather than doing the pairwise to maybe first try a refinement. So maybe just run a refinement again first and see if that fixes the problem. If not, then we can go back and do a pairwise. So you'll see you've got 3 boxes open here. So we have our reference stations. As you can see under the reference station view, this is basically all our scans selected here in one group. So this is our reference. So this basically won't be moving. The other one we have here below it is the moving stations, which would appear in this view here. So at the moment, because we've registered everything together, we basically have this one group selected. So what I'm going to do is go down to, so let's say it was station 23 that was causing us issues. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlink it from this reference set of data. What it's then going to do is basically move that down into the moving stations group. Now, if it was 23 to 5, a number of other stations we identified, we could go into each one individually and we could just start unlinking them and they would appear here under the moving stations. Once in the moving stations, we'll be able to basically move between them in order to register them back against the reference group. You can also turn on and off different stations that you want it to use when it's performing the registration in either. So for this instance, what I'm going to do is I want to basically register 23, so I'm going to use it and get it back in properly registered against this group of stations. So to do that, what it's basically looking for you to do is you can either hit the automatically register, and if it's pretty close in the first place, then it will rerun the registration again, and perhaps that will fix it. If not, then what you're doing is you're trying to pick some common pairs between each scan. So in this instance, in the reference, it's obviously quite difficult to see what I'm doing here. So if I go and if I select the view, then I can open up the limit box command. It'll allow me to create a limit box just so I'm viewing the data that I want to work with. Change that. Another tool you can use as well, just to help you out, is if you flick it here, you can use the see all, so it'll see everything, see inside, and basically if you're looking at interiors, that will just remove the walls of the ceiling, depending on how you're viewing it. You've also got in there is a see outline as well, which can be quite handy from viewing through external buildings into internals. So for this, I'm just going to put on the see inside. I'm going to close my limit box command. The limit box will still remain active. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just pick some common points that I can see between each of these scan sets. And if you have auto align ticked, basically after you select the first one, it'll then start to align it up itself from there. So you can untick that and you can go and pick 2 or 3 and it'll pair it up at the end. But if you tick the auto align, it will start to actually compute the registration as you pick them. Then at the bottom, it'll continually give you a residual error and an overlap, just telling you how it's tied it in as it's doing it. At the bottom, you'll see these registration results. But again, I can just use the limit box command here, just because we're viewing out internals and externals, just to limit the area that I'd like to see, and I can actually go in here and start to see the overlap between the two of them. If I select my views, I can just view that from a top-down view, and I can see how those are aligning there between both the red in reference and the green in the moving scans. So I'm quite happy with that. You do have an option to basically optimize it again. If you're happy enough, then what I can do here is if I add to reference, it'll basically just take scan 23 and move it back into our registration set of points. So once you've tidied it up, it's usually a good idea maybe to run the refinement again. So basically, rather than just pairing one scan to a group of scans or one scan to each other, the refinement's going to do an overall adjustment of the full data set. Now what you can do here is you can just decide if you would like to hold any of those stations fixed. So basically, if you want to keep one fixed, it's not going to move, everything else is going to adjust off of that. You can also decide what ones you're going to include. If there's any you'd like to exclude, basically you don't want them being adjusted in this adjustment. So I'm just going to do it for everything here, and I'm just going to hit refine overall registration. And once it's refined that, it will give you basically a quality report. The final tab here is for georeferencing. So in order to georeference it, you first need to refine your project. So you like to do your complete adjustments. So your projects, and it's been fully registered, and you're happy with it. You would then georeference it in order basically to move the full scan cloud, the full region, into its new position, either observed against a topo survey, control points, whatever you have. So if I just look at the Project Explorer here, under points, there's actually a few points in here, and you'll see them here, station 7, 12, that we did measure out on site using on the X7 with the laser pointer. So these were measured as precision points in the field. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in a CSV file just containing my control points. What it's doing in this instance, it's going to ask me if I want to merge the points, basically because it's found that they actually contain the same name. So in this circumstance, I'm going to just put, when I say I don't want you to merge them, I want you actually to rename them. So I'm going to rename them and add in a suffix, just con for control points, so I know that these are my control points, and I'm going to import them into the project. Just give you a report to let you know they've been imported. So I've imported my control points here. Now, we previously actually done a georeferencing in the fields that shouldn't be too far away, but as we've done some processing, basically I want to just georeference it back into position again. So if your points are quite far away, one easy way, rather than going back and forward on the screen to pick them, is using the Project Explorer. So it's going to ask you for the scan, the point ID, and then the scan point. So if you select the point ID first, which you can do then is you can pick it from out from the Project Explorer, and then if you want to pick this scan point, it'll automatically move on to pick the next one. So again, we're going to go station 7, control point. You start to get some residual errors building up. I'll just pick the last one here. And that'll tie in all these points. So what you'll see is you'll get some residuals in eastings, northerns and elevations for each of them. And if you don't like any of them, then you've got the option basically to turn them off. So if you remove that one, then you'll see you start to see a little bit better residuals than some of the other ones. So if you've got an error in this point, this can be an example here of how you can fix that. You can turn it on, turn it off, or you can just remove it from it completely. And then what you would do is you would be selecting the georeference command basically to apply that translation to your point cloud to fit the control. Just to note on that, it says scan point name. So if we haven't recorded these previously, then you can basically go in and pick a point off the scan. So there's plenty of black and white targets on this building. So if we were using the black and white scan targets, for instance, then it might be that you can actually just, if you hadn't measured it in the field, then you can just pick off that point as a coordinate basically from the scan. And then if you had a control point for here, you could use that. So that basically runs through some of the registration tools, including the georeferencing that can be used in TBC just to alter your scan data if you find any problems with it from your data collection and registration in the field.